Hey YouTube, it's Brian Streckfus here. This video is about the history of guitar tablature, and it also features one of my recordings, Milan Pavane 3. So you can skip ahead to the music if you would like to, but I think knowing about the history, you really get more enjoyment out of the music. If you are a guitarist, this may look familiar to you, and the numbers represent where your fingers go. So this is the lowest, thickest strings are on the bottom, and the thinner treble strings are on the top. And the number represents what fret you put your finger at. So it doesn't represent your fingerings or the pitch or anything, it just represents frets. And I should also mention that this piece was written in 1536, and it is the first publication of instrumental tablature ever, so you could kind of say that it's the first written down guitar song, though that's a bit of a stretch, but that's the gist of it. Okay, and this page is not the entire song. This music up here at the top was part of Pavane number 2, and so paper was very expensive back then and important, so they tried to save as much paper as possible. And there's even some pieces where if you flip the page upside down, it'll be the other instrument part or something like that, just to conserve paper. But this ending just kind of leaks into the page, and it does the big fancy capital letter thing to let you know that it's a new song. And then here's page 2. And then you can kind of see that here's a new song here. So if you're a guitarist, there's a couple major differences between this 16th century vihuela tablature and modern guitar tablature. For one, it was written for the vihuela, which is different. And since it was written for the vihuela, the G string is actually an F sharp, and so that's why there's a 1 here instead of a 0. So that's actually just a C major chord and not a C augmented chord. So that's something that you just have to sort of get used to, that there's going to be a lot of 1s on the G string where normally you would be used to 0. And I guess that's why it's changed over time, because that system of tuning just doesn't work out that great, because you just end up with a lot of bars and you have to work really hard for an easy triad. So that's why the interpretation I do, I use standard tuning and not F sharp tuning, and I feel like I can sustain more and be more musical in general. One major difference between this and modern guitar tablature is that there's these note heads above it, and that just dictates the rhythm as opposed to dashed lines on modern tablature. And I think you'll get the idea of how the rhythm works once I play the recording, and you can watch the scroll across in real time, and I'll have the mouse point to what's happening and when. But it's really simple rhythms though. So what does all this boil down to? Well, I guess it boils down to a couple things. You can transcribe this into modern sheet music for Melbay or a publishing company like that, which would be an awesome job. And plus there are some rare pieces out there that are probably only in tablature but not in sheet music, and nobody really plays it. So if you really wanted to learn a forgotten song, it's a useful skill to know how to do this. But if you're not really interested in reading 16th century tablature, what does this all mean? Well, I think the major difference between tablature and sheet music is that sheet music can show rhythm in simultaneous voices, where this couldn't really do that because you would have to have double rhythm values above it. So that just boils down to sustain and legato issues, which end up being kind of vague. So you don't really know how long am I supposed to sustain that 0 for, just until I get to that chord or until there. You don't really know how long, and that's sort of an artistic decision that should be weighed based on like historical accuracy kind of decisions. And the more modern the music is, generally the longer you want to sustain for. And since this is really old music, they really didn't sustain for a long period of time. And I think Milan was quoted saying that this is supposed to sustain until the dissonance sounds false. And those were his words. And so even that definition is sort of vague because ugliness is subjective. But decisions like that are what makes music great, though. Otherwise, every performance would be the same kind of thing. So sustain is really up to you. It just can be a little bit more specific with sheet music, but even sheet music has its own problems. But whatever system you use is perfectly fine. There's no right or wrong way of playing music. Just as long as you get the job done at the end of the day is really the main question. So if you're a songwriter and you just want inspiration and you read tablature just to get ideas and then mess it up anyways, then whatever system you use doesn't really matter, just as long as you write a good song in the end. And so that about wraps it up. Let me just run through real quick what we learned. We learned that this piece was written in 1536, and actually the real name of it is called Libro de Musica de Vihuela de Mano el Maestro. And it was the first publication of instrumental vihuela tablature. We learned that capital letters tend to divide pieces because paper was important back then. Don't read it upside down. We learned that this G string right here is actually an F sharp, not a G, because that was the vihuela tuning. So just keep that in mind. You can either tune your guitar, and fix that G to an F sharp and play it as it is, or you can stay in standard like I do and just get a rewritten version basically, which might be better because a lot of people have thought about it for a long time, and just standard tuning has more advantages for these pavanes. Maybe other pieces have more advantages in F sharp though, and there are some pieces that do play in F sharp, like Navarre's pieces, like Canción del Emperador, which you can check out. I have a recording of. And one thing we learned that's different from modern tablature is that there's note heads above that dictate the rhythm instead of dash lines. And that about wraps it up. That's pretty much all there is to it. There's a little symbols that they use occasionally, like an X instead of a 10, because a 10 could be a 1 and a 0, so they have Roman numerals sometimes, just to avoid confusion. And there's up and down strokes, which is similar to guitar tablature. I hope this explanation helped your understanding in tablature and where it came from and how long it's been around. Okay, so now I'm going to play the recording and you can follow along with my mouse pointer so that you don't get lost. I hope you enjoy the recording, especially now that you know some history behind it. And you can follow me on social media. My links are at the end of the video. Thanks for watching.